Hey guys, welcome to Conceptual Geometry, Lesson 4.5, Reflections and Their Rules. We're going to begin today by reviewing a couple lines, special lines. Y equals X. So you see it right here. We're going to reflect this triangle in the line Y equals X. I know we reviewed Y equals mx plus b a little bit earlier in this unit, but I just want to review this line as it's very important when it comes to transformations. Y equals x basically has a slope of 1 and goes through the origin. Or you can think of every single coordinate where the x and the y are equal, such as 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, negative 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 2, negative 3, so on and so forth. So the line y equals x goes through the origin and is diagonal through those boxes, if you will. So there's the line y equals x. Okay, so if I want to sketch this triangle reflected through that line, the first thing I'm going to do is sketch in that line y equals x. And I like to do this as a dashed line. I don't have a straight edge, so I'm doing this freehand as best I can. It's kind of easy to sketch in because you just go exactly diagonal through all those boxes. So there's the line y equals x. So now, how do I reflect this triangle through this line? Well, it's a little bit difficult here because what we need to do is we actually need to count diagonals. So I'm going to start with the closest one to the line, point C. If I want to reflect this through that line, I count the diagonal. So this is half a diagonal, so I have to go half a diagonal to the other side. So right there is going to be C prime. I do the same thing with the other. So let's take point A right here. Let's count diagonals. 1, 2, and then there's a half. So I go half, 1, 2. So A prime goes there. And then B, let's take this. Let's count diagonals. 1, 2, 3, and a half. So there's a half, 1, 2, 3, so B prime goes there. Now if I sketch in this triangle, I should have a triangle that's exactly the same size and shape as the original one. And if you were to take your paper and fold it on this line y equals x, this triangle would fold on top of this triangle here. Well, what are those coordinates? Because I do need to write the coordinates here. This says state the coordinates of both triangles. Okay, so let's do that. We'll start with A, B, and C, the original triangle. So A has coordinates negative 4, 1. B has coordinates negative 3, 4. C has coordinates 1, 2. Now how about A prime, B prime, and C prime? A prime has coordinates 1, negative 4. B prime has coordinates 4, negative 3. And C prime has coordinates 2, 1. And there's a relationship between these coordinates and these coordinates. I want you guys to see if you can figure that out. We're going to talk about rules today. So I did something to those numbers to come up with these numbers. There's a pattern. Okay, let's talk about the next one. It says draw on the line y equals negative x. Well, y equals negative x is another important line. And basically it's very similar to the one up above, except now the x and the y coordinates have the same numbers but opposite signs, like 1, negative 1, 2, negative 2, 3, negative 3, or negative 1, 1, negative 2, 2, negative 3, 3. So again, you can see here, this is going to be a diagonal line through the origin, but it has a slope of negative 1 instead of a positive 1. So there's the line y equals negative x. And there's a typo in this. I just want to draw your attention to it. This right here should not be y equals x. So if you're watching at home, I'm going to fix this in class, but that should be negative x. I want to sketch in that line. So it's going to go diagonal through the boxes this way. So there's my line y equals negative x. All right, so we're going to do the same thing we did before. I want to count the diagonals to the line. Now this, I think you can see, it's going to be a little complicated because it's going to overlap. All right, so let's see here. Let's start with a 1.5. So there's a half and there's 1. So A prime is going to go right there. B is relatively easy. It's half a diagonal that way, half a diagonal that way. It's going to go right there. And C is not too bad either. It's 1.5. So there's a half and then there's 1. It's going to go right there. And let's sketch this in. What's kind of neat when you reflect, when your line of reflection, I should say, goes through the figure, these points right here are on both triangles. All right, let's write down the coordinates. So let's start with the original, A, B, and C. So the original triangle A is negative 4, 1. Looks like it's the same triangle, right? B is negative 3, 4. And C is 1, 2. So now A prime, B prime, C prime. A prime here is negative 1, 4. B prime is negative 4, 3. And C prime is negative 2, negative 1. So again, I want you guys to see if you can find a pattern that takes these coordinates to those coordinates. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Because if you notice here, 4, 1, 1, 4, the numbers are the same. It's just something's happening with the signs and the order. We'll see if you can predict that in a couple minutes. This is not in your note packet, so I just want you to follow along here. If you're in class, we'll be doing this kind of as a sideboard, but I want to review some of the reflections that we've already done in this unit. So the first one is reflecting in the x-axis. So here's your x-axis. I want to reflect this point in the x-axis, and it goes down here. All right, so that would go right here. A prime would have coordinates 3, negative 2. And again, what I want you to do is I want you to notice, if I'm reflecting the x-axis, my coordinates go from 3, 2 to 3, negative 2. There's a pattern. I did something to the coordinates. So I want you to predict maybe, what if I give you point B is 7, 1, what would B prime be without graphing it? Okay, so reflecting in the x, again, just a reminder, 3, 2 went to 3, negative 2. We also reflected in the y-axis. So here's my y-axis, which means this point would reflect over here. So in this case, A prime would be negative 3, 2. So again, there's a pattern. When we reflect in the y-axis, this coordinate becomes this coordinate. So what changed going from A to A prime? See if you can figure that out. And then the other one we did was reflecting through the origin. So remember, when we go through the origin, we go through a point. So this goes over here. In other words, I went down 2 over 3, down 2 over 3. So A prime in this case would go right there. What are those coordinates? Negative 3, negative 2. So when I reflect in the origin, 3, 2 becomes negative 3, negative 2. What was the numeric pattern? Okay, now let's apply those rules. So first of all, reflecting in the line y equals x. If we go back to the first page, here's y equals x. Let's just pick 1. If I had the coordinate negative 4, 1, it goes to 1, negative 4. Well, 1 stays 1, negative 4 stays negative 4, but what happened is I changed the order. So if this was xy, over here becomes yx. Okay, so that is the rule for this, yx. In words, switch. Okay, so if I reflect in the line y equals x, I just switch the coordinates. Next, we have the reflection in the line y equals negative x. Okay, let's go back to that example. So right here, negative 4, 1 became negative 1, 4. Now this is a little complicated. Notice a negative 4 became a positive 4. Positive 1 became a negative 1. And this was 4, 1, and this is 1, 4. So this is a little complicated. If this was my original point x, y, here I negated and I switched. So what that's going to look like is negative y, negative x. And in words, we switch and negate. Okay, then here's our last three. We just did those on the other page. Reflection in the y-axis. That's what we're doing first, y-axis. So let's go back here. 3, 2 became negative 3, 2. So what changed? The order is the same, right? 3, 2, 3, 2. But notice I negated the first one, so I negated the x. So this is xy, this is negative xy. And that's my rule. In words, we negate x. Okay, reflecting in the x-axis. 3, 2 became 3, negative 2. What did we do? We negated the y. So that coordinate becomes x, negative y. And quite simply, we negate y. And our last one, reflecting through the origin. 3, 2 became negative 3, negative 2. So order is the same, but I negated both of them. So that's going to look like this. Negative x, negative y, and I simply negate both. All right, so what we're going to start doing is using these rules rather than graph each point. So let's see if we can do that here. It says find the image of A prime, find the image A prime of A, which is negative 2, 6, after each of the following and state which quadrant it lies. So first of all, let's just sketch negative 2, 6. Negative 2, 6 is approximately right here. Here's point A. Now let's also do a quick review of our quadrants. Quadrants, we like to use Roman numerals, just like the Super Bowl. And this is the first quadrant, or quadrant 1. And then we go counterclockwise. So here's quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to take this point here and reflect it in the x-axis. So here's my x-axis. I'm going to be visual. I'm not going to graph all of these. And it's going to go down here. So right away, I know it's going to be in quadrant 3. And when I reflect in the x-axis, I just negate the y. So I'm going to take this coordinate here and negate the y. Okay, well in that case, A prime is going to be negative 2, negative 6. And we already said that's going to be in quadrant 3. Okay, next I want to reflect it in the line y equals x. So remember your line y equals x looks like this. And if I reflect it in that line, it's going to go over here. So I know it's going to end up in quadrant 4. My rule for reflecting in y equals x is to do this. Switch the coordinates. So in this case, I just need to switch those coordinates. So A prime here is going to be 6, negative 2. And we said that's going to be in quadrant 4. Reflecting the line y equals negative x. Well, y equals negative x is this line. So I reflect it over that line. It stays right here. It's going to stay in quadrant 2. This is probably the most challenging one, I think. Y equals negative x. What we have to do is we have to switch and negate the coordinates. So I take my original coordinates here. I have to switch the order and negate them both. All right, so that's going to give me negative 6, positive 2. And we said that's in quadrant 2. That one's a little bit challenging. Next one, reflecting the y-axis. Here's your y-axis. I take that point, reflect it over here. It's going to be in quadrant 1. And the rule for reflecting in the y-axis from up above, negate the x. Okay, so I take my original coordinate, negate the x. So in this case, A prime is going to be 2, 6, and we said that's quadrant 1. And then lastly, reflecting it through the origin. If I go through the origin, I'm going to end up over here. That's going to be in quadrant 4. The rule for reflecting through the origin, as you can see right here, is you just negate both. So I have to take this and negate them both. So -2 becomes +2, and the 6 becomes negative. So A prime here is going to be 2, -6, and that was in quadrant 4. And the last group of exercises here, this is a little bit challenging. We have to state the transformation that took place. So they're giving us the starting coordinate and the ending coordinate, and they want us to see, okay, what happened? Well, if you notice here, what changed going from A to A prime? This is a -1, that becomes a +1. So what I did here is I negated the x, the first one. So when you negate x, you did a reflection in the y-axis. There's a couple ways you can write it. You can write out the word, or you can just do a little r and then y-axis, like so. Okay, the next one, I went from -1, 5 to -5, 1. So I did a couple things here. -1 becomes +1, 5 becomes -5, and the order changed. So what I did here is I did a switch and negate. Okay, switch and negate is this one. Reflection in the line y equals -x. Reflection in the line y equals -x. Okay, letter C, I went from -3, -4 to 3, 4. So order is the same, 3, 4, 3, 4, but what changed is I negated both. So if I negate both, that's this. That's a reflection through the origin. All right, moving on, 2 more. In letter D, I went from 2, 3 to 2, -3. So order stayed the same, 2, 3, 2, 3, but what changed is the 3 was negated. That's the y coordinate. So here, you negate y. So we have to memorize, when you negate y, what do? Reflect through the x-axis. So little r, x-axis. And then the last one, I went from 12, 6 to 6, 12. No negating occurring here, but the order changed. So this is just a switch only. Which one does a switch? That's this right here. Reflection in the line y equals x. All right, well, that concludes day 5 notes. As you can see, this is going to get a little bit more challenging, but fortunately for you guys, we're going to have lots of opportunities to review. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or if you want to meet via Zoom. And thanks for watching.